Contrary to popular belief, California is not the strictest state when it comes to gun control. And with the recent San Bernardino terrorist attacks, there's been a lot more confusion when it comes to the gun laws in California. So I wanted to come out here and make this video today to kind of clear up the confusion and give everyone a better understanding of California gun laws, which are often very misunderstood in the shooting community as well as the non-shooting community. We see the media painting this picture of California as, you know, the same as the shooting community, having very strict gun control, the tightest in the nation. And while it does have strict gun control, not the strictest, and I'm going to clear up some of those myths about California gun control in this video. So this video is going to be for people in California that want to get into shooting, for people that are in California that are into shooting that don't really know much about the laws, and for those that just, hey, I just want to know what the California gun laws are like after the San Bernardino terrorist attacks and, you know, see what they're like and help educate myself about the laws in California. This is December 12th, 2015. So up to this date, these laws are all current to the best of my knowledge. Hope you enjoy. All right, I want to keep this video non-political. I don't like to get political on my blog because there are people on the right and on the left that love shooting firearms, and I know many of them. People that you would traditionally think are left, socially liberal, they would call them, love shooting firearms, own guns. It happens in every state probably. And so instead of calling them left and right, I like to call them pro-gun and anti-gun. So not going to get too political in this video, really just want to stick to the laws of the land in California and just make this an informative video. So first off, caliber restrictions. Are there any caliber restrictions in California? Yes, 50 BMG is banned. That ban happened around 15 years ago, and funny enough, one of the reasons they were using was that they were scared that someone with a 50 BMG could shoot down a police helicopter. But hey, that was one of the reasons, and of course it's California, so they did ban the 50 BMG. However, if you have 50 BMG, you're grandfathered in, you're allowed to legally keep those 50 BMGs. Now let's talk about what the media traditionally calls assault weapons. In the shooting community, the term is divided between assault weapons and modern sporting rifles. For me, I don't really think it's an issue. I think they're protected no matter what under the Constitution. So call them what you want, you know. The term AR and AK is just as scary to anti-gunners as the term assault weapon is. So whatever term you want to use, you know, that's totally up to you. But basically what we're talking about here is a semi-automatic rifle with a pistol grip and a detachable magazine. So generally ARs and AKs are what people refer to when we're talking about these. Contrary to popular belief, these are generally legal in California, with the exemption that you need a bullet button or mag lock and a 10-round magazine. But before we get into that, are there certain ARs, AKs, FALs that are illegal in California? Yes, there are. There was a law in California that was passed years ago, just a general assault weapons ban, they called it. And certain rifle types are banned by name. So you got rifles like Colt XM177, Colt AR-15, HK PSG-1, the Galil, the Sig Sauer 550, Sig Sauer 551, etc. So this happened, I think, late 90s, maybe 97 or so. And so any battle rifle that you could think of that was popular in the late 90s or earlier would be banned by name under that law. However, this law does not affect just general ARs and AKs. So you could still build ARs, you could still get ARs. You know, most of them are still available because we have so many different types of, you know, battle rifles available to us today as civilians. Let me throw on my sunglasses. It's getting a little bright out here. The sun's killing my eyes. So, AR-15, AK type style rifles. With an AR-15, you're going to have something called a bullet button, which looks just like the magazine released, except it's solid. You can't press it down. And it's going to have a little opening, a little hole, and you could stick something like a paper clip, the tip of a bullet head right in there, and it's going to drop the mag. So it's something that requires a tool. In California, you need a tool to be able to release the mag on a semi-automatic rifle with pistol grip and detachable magazine. Mag capacity in California, as many people know, is limited to 10 rounds. However, that law came into place also around 15 years ago, and if you had standard capacity magazines, that is 30 rounds or above, or high capacity magazines, standard capacity or high capacity magazines, you're grandfathered in. So you're allowed to keep those magazines. Can you use them on an AR or AK? No, you cannot, because it has a pistol grip. However, something like a Sega Sporter or an AK that's been converted, you know, to get rid of the pistol grip, you guys know what I'm talking about, those are allowed to use the 30-round standard capacity magazines. You can still use those legally as long as you have the magazines legally after the date they banned 30-round magazines in California and above. Police officers, though, they're considered a nuisance in California. It's a very weird law. So if you're found with those magazines on you, a police officer could confiscate them. You hear about it happening sometimes. You won't get in legal trouble if you have those magazines legally, but for whatever reason, they're still considered a nuisance. And in California, you could have magazine rebuild kits until 2013. So, you know, up until the last day of December 2013, you were allowed to have magazine rebuild kits. That does not mean you can assemble these magazines and shoot them in your gun or have them laying around your house. They have to be disassembled as parts. That law was banned, of course, as California does with so many gun laws. You know, it changes year to year. So you never know what's coming down the pipe. You kind of hear around, you know, late summer, you know what laws are coming down, what laws the governor's going to veto or not veto. Legal length on an AR-15, you have to have a 16-inch barrel on the rifle, okay, and with the buttstock fully collapsed, it has to be 30 inches minimum. Other than that, it's an SBR, and you cannot have SBRs or NFA items in California. You can have an AR pistol, which I will get into later in this video, but other than that, SBRs are a no-go, 30 inches or longer. As far as registration in California of rifles, many people don't know this. Rifles were not registered in California until 2014, so the beginning of 2014. You had up until the last day of December 2013, just like the magazine rebuild kits, to purchase a rifle without it being registered with the state of California. Rifles are now registered in California, just like handguns are. Storage in home of rifles. There are no restrictions on storing your rifles in home unless you have a child. So it's kind of, I don't think there's an exact age for that. It's just, if you have a toddler, you gotta lock up your rifles. You can't have a loaded AR-15 laying around. Other than that, there's no requirement to have a safe in your home. However, with every rifle purchase made, the FFL is legally required to sell you a gun lock. So that can be as cheap as a $7 gun lock, $30 gun lock, or if you bring in a receipt of having a gun safe to prove that you have a gun safe at home, that works too. You just have to prove that you have some sort of gun lock. So most people just go with, you know, throwing the $7 to buy a little cable lock to lock up their rifle. You know, a lot of people never end up using it. All right, so let's talk about handguns now. In California, we have the notorious California Handgun Roster, which is a list of California legal handguns. Yeah, that's right. They keep a list of California legal handguns. Sounds crazy, and it is, but they do. So every year, firearms manufacturers, Glock, Beretta, whatever, they have to pay a fee to keep their handguns on the roster. And the thing is, as time goes on, some of these handgun companies are like, well, shoot, we don't make those handguns anymore. Let's just let them drop off the roster. So as the years have gone on, the list has gotten smaller and smaller for the types of handguns you're allowed to have in California. Right now, you know, you got things like the Glock 19 Gen 3, Glock 20 Gen 3. All the Gen 3 Glocks are still made by Glock and still legal in California. They're legal on the roster. If a new company or a company wants to put a new handgun on the roster, they're going to have to pay the fee. They're going to have to keep paying the fee every year to keep their handgun on the roster. And now they're going to have I don't really know how this works because I don't have one of these handguns. They're supposed to have some sort of magazine disconnect where you can't fire the handgun when the magazine's disconnected, some sort of, you know, safety, some preventative measure. And you have to have a loaded chamber indicator. Basically, you'll see, if you come to California, you'll see these. They have writing all over the slide that says, when this lever is up or when this lever is red, it means the chamber is loaded. So those are two things that is newly required in California that new handguns must have to be put on the roster. Handguns that were already on the roster before those laws came into place don't need those, like the Gen 3 Glocks, other revolvers, and handguns. We did have something in California. The roster does not mean you can only buy handguns on the roster. There are a few ways around that, legal ways around that. The biggest one, which was banned last year, so you were allowed to do this until last day of December 2014, was called single shot exemption. So what single shot exemption was, the FFL would take a non-roster California handgun, convert it to single shot. It can only fire one shot, and sell it to the customer. The customer would walk out the door with their newly purchased handgun, walk right back in the door, and then the FFL would take it apart, take those parts out, and convert it back to normal. Just put the normal parts back in, and it would just be a normal handgun. And the California government, of course, they banned this procedure. Single shot exemption was banned in California last year. You can no longer do it. And you know, there was some controversy about this even in California. People were like, well, that doesn't make any sense. It's not a single shot pistol. But I mean, hey, if it was illegal, why would they be making this law to ban single shot exemption? It was totally legal loophole. People were doing it everywhere. AR pistols in California, you can have AR pistols. However, they're not on the roster. So you're going to have to buy those used now. Up until last year, you could buy those through single shot exemption. You could build your own out of 80% lowers in California. So does that mean you can just have an SBR lower laying around, or SBR upper laying around if you have an AR pistol? Yes, it does. If you don't have an AR pistol, can you have an SBR upper laying around? No, you can't. You don't have like good cause to have that upper, so you could get in legal trouble for having that. It's illegal. Don't do it. Threaded barrels. This is one of the weird ones. You cannot have a threaded barrel in your pistol in California. Silencers, suppressors, illegal in California, but I mean, you still can't have the threaded barrel for whatever reason. Or you can't have it in your handgun. Can you have a threaded barrel? Yes, you can. You can have it just laying on your ground, sure. You can't put it in your handgun. That would be illegal. Inheriting handguns. You can inherit handguns in California without a background check. Same with rifles, through family members. So your grandfather has it or something, or your mom or dad, they can pass it on down to you without you needing to go through an FFL to a gun store. So if you're 19 years old, the legal age to buy a handgun in California is 21, by the way. If you're 18 or 19 and your dad has a handgun, he's like, hey, I don't want this handgun anymore, I'm going to pass it on to you, son. He can do that, and you can receive that handgun at age 19. In order to buy a handgun in California, you're going to need to get a handgun safety certificate, just a little card with a dumb little test. What it really is just a hidden tax. I think it's 25 bucks, and you take this test where it asks you questions like, should you keep a firearm loaded around children? No, of course not. So anyone can pass it. I had one guy at a gun store telling me the only person he didn't see pass it was a person who had kind of broken English, had a really hard time reading the test and understanding it. But I mean, if that person spoke English and read it fluently, he'd be fine, no problem. You know, you really don't need to study for this test, but you do need to get the card and able to be able to purchase handguns in California. Registration of handguns. Handguns are registered in California, and they have been for some time. Storing your handgun in home. You're allowed to keep your handgun loaded at home as long as you have small children. If there's small children, someone of questionable age that can get a hold of it, you can get in trouble for having a loaded handgun just laying on your nightstand. But of course, they have those safes that read your fingerprints. You can quickly open them. You can do things like that. Other than that, keep your handguns loaded, no problem. NFA items and AOWs. NFA items are pretty much illegal in California, and you know, silencers, full auto class 3, can't get those in California like you can in other states. AOWs though are legal in California, so something like the Serbu Super Shorties or the Winchester, or I'm sorry, Remington Witness Protection 870, the little shorty shotguns, legal in California. You do have to open up, you know, some sort of trust, go through the process and get it, and plus they're like $850. I've never seen someone with an AOW, but I have seen stores selling them, and you can get them in California. Whether it's worth it, it's up to you. Transporting firearms in California. Firearms must be transported unloaded unless you have a CCW permit. Handguns must be kept locked. So if you're carrying them, you know, on your passenger seat or your back seat of your, or the back seat of your car, you have to have your handgun locked up. If it's in the trunk though, that's okay. It doesn't need to be locked. It can just be in its case in your trunk unlocked, because a trunk is considered a locked case in California. Can you have loaded magazines in your car? Yes, you can. Contrary to popular belief, you can keep loaded magazines right next to your handgun. It can be in the handgun case right beside it, as long as they're not inserted into your handgun. They can't be attached to your handgun. So, of course, keep your handgun locked up, but you can have loaded magazines next to it. If you have a CCW permit, you can carry your handgun loaded in your car. Rifles. Can you carry loaded rifles in California in your car? No, you cannot. And also in 2011, open carry of rifles was banned. So up until 2011, you can open carry down the sidewalk your rifle or handgun. But that was banned. So if you live somewhere in the city like LA or San Francisco, you don't want to be walking down the sidewalk with your AR-15. Put it in a cardboard box, put it in some type of soft case. If you're cheap, just have a soft guitar case laying around, put it in the soft guitar case. That works fine. A gun's sturdy. It's not a freaking China doll. You can put your gun in any sort of soft case you got laying around. You don't need a hard case necessarily. Carrying weapons in California. Open carry is no longer legal in California. However, last year there was something called the Peruta Decision. That's P-E-R-U-T-A. Check it out. And basically what happened was the Ninth Circuit Court decided that California needs to be a shall issue state because we were too restrictive on ways to carry bearing arms outside of the home. So basically what happened was it made CCW a lot easier to get in California. But still, even after that decision, some counties were fighting it tooth and nail and saying, no, we're not going to issue the permits. And that's to be expected in California. It just happens, They don't follow the laws if they don't want to follow those laws. It's just how it goes. It sucks sometimes. But, we're dealing with it right now. Right now they're fighting the decision, of course. They're fighting it in court. So we're going to see how that turns out, if it's going to stick around or not. But right now, thousands and thousands of people since last year, February 2014, have gotten their concealed carry permits. And it depends on the county, Even before the decision, some counties were very lenient with it. It just really depended on the sheriff that was in charge. And they would just give them out to really anyone that didn't have a criminal record. How about carrying CCW? So what about the restrictions on your CCW permit once you have one? Where can you carry a firearm? Pretty much unrestricted except for federal buildings. So like a post office, you can't carry your CCW firearm into a post office. Schools, you can carry on school campuses actually. Right now it's December 12, 2015. You can still do it. However, starting January 1st, 2016, new laws coming in, of course, which says you now need a letter. You need some sort of letter of approval to carry on that campus. Most likely you would get this letter of approval from the dean of the college or the principal of elementary school if you're going to be picking up your kids from elementary school or something like that. We'll see how that plays out. But yeah, basically right now, everyone was talking about Texas. Texas deciding, oh, Texas, you can open carry, not open carry, you can conceal carry your handgun on school campus. That's actually been the law of the land in California. That was legal as long as you had a CCW permit since the early 1990s in California. So kind of interesting. A lot of people didn't know that. You'll actually hear, a lot of FUD being thrown around which says, in California, campus carry is illegal. Not true at all. Not true. I've seen a few articles where it showed states where it was illegal to campus carry and California was listed. Totally not true. It's been legal. Other than that, carry your concealed carry permits as long as, carry your concealed carry firearms as long as you got the permit for it. In California, it's good for 2 years, and there's going to be a list of the handguns on the back. Up to 3 handguns you're allowed to put on your CCW permit. You have to qualify with each one. Pretty simple process. You just kind of go out there with an approved instructor and fire off a few rounds. He says, okay, this handgun's good to go. You're proficient with the weapon. I'm going to mark you down. You're going to be able to carry that handgun. So, all in all, I hope the video was informative. I hope you learned something new. Hope you enjoyed it. And, I really wanted to clear up some of the, myths about California gun laws. A lot of myths going around in the shooting community as well as the media. People have been wondering, what are the gun laws like in California? Would the gun laws have stopped the shooting? Pretty much no, they wouldn't have, because the terrorists in San Bernardino bypassed the law by removing, from what we know right now, removing the bullet button and using standard capacity 30 round magazines in their ARs, which you can't do in California. But generally, I hope this video hit the meat and potatoes of California gun laws. The big question in California, of course, is are AR-15s, AKs, etc. legal in California? And yes, for the most part they are. Just gotta have a mag lock where you need some sort of tool to drop the mag, and you can't be using standard capacity magazines unless it's something like a Sega with no pistol grip. So, hope you enjoyed it, and cheers to everyone. Have a nice day.
Nice.